guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well and staying healthy. Today I wanted to share my tips for how to live fearlessly so that you can ultimately go after your dreams and so live a happy and healthy life. So my first tip is to write down your fears. We have a million thoughts that are going through our heads. Often they're negative and irrational, but if you put them down on paper, you can begin to rationalize them and face your fears, literally. I wanted to share with you a list that I made back in 2017, so about 3 years ago. And one of them was about working at the World Bank, which is where I work now. And I said one of my fears was not securing a full-time job with the World Bank and consequently having to take a mediocre job paying low salary. But once I wrote down what my fear was, I wrote down some plan of action that I could take to counter this fear. So I said I could prioritize my World Bank work, I could give it my all, I could get career advice from other World Bank folks, I could let them know I want more work and put myself out there. I could keep my options open and know that 1 year more of World Bank experience will be attractive to others and I can get a good job, continue networking. So this is just one example, and basically you want to write down your fears and then write a plan of action of how you can counter it. So let's say you want to get out of debt and you're afraid you're never going to be able to get out of debt. Maybe it's saying, okay, I'm going to create a payment plan, or I'm going to start saving, and you think, well, how can I save? I barely make any money, like I can barely cover my bills. How can I do that? Maybe it's saying, okay, I will put $10 a week into my savings account. I will cook from now on my lunches. Little things that you can do to counter those fears. If it's saying, if I'm afraid that I will never meet the love of my life or a partner, well, I can make a list of what are the qualities and values that are important to me in a partner, and I can listen to the red flags when someone doesn't meet those values. So there are different things that you can do to make sure that that fear is not going to become a reality. And this way you're literally looking at your fears and saying, okay, this is what I'm working with. But sometimes when we keep it in our heads or we complain about it, we're perpetuating it, but we're not really clear on what is it that we are actually afraid of. Sometimes the fear is not as obvious, like, you know, the reason why you are not pursuing a job of your dreams is maybe because you feel like you're not good enough, and not because you don't have time. You may tell yourself you don't have time, but really it's because you feel like you don't have the skills for that job. So then how can you work towards that? So the point is to get really honest with yourself about what is your fear, because no one else has to see this but you, and for you to then really be strategic and think about how you can tackle this problem. The tip number 2 is to recognize that everyone is on their own timetable. Now, we hear this often, not to compare yourself to others, but it's kind of hard to not just naturally want to compare yourself to others. Recognize that there is no one like you, and that is the beauty of it. You don't have to compete with anyone. You may look at someone else and say, oh my god, that person has the perfect life or the perfect body, and here I am, like I'm so far behind. Like, realize that just as you are a gift. You are a gift as you are, imperfectly so, as we all are, because there is no one like you. So already you have inherent value to give to this world. The only thing you have to do is to figure out and work towards that thing that lights you up. Now, when it comes to figuring that out, I remember I was like 25 and I saw that all my friends were getting married, starting to have babies, and having these successful careers, like budding careers. And meanwhile, I was working at a restaurant. I was doing 2 unpaid internships. I was barely making enough money to survive. And I was just feeling like so low about myself. And I realized that, you know, my path was different. So I took that path, and it was because I knew I wanted to go to grad school. And so I put in the time, and I was also like traveling the world and getting all this experience, but I came back to the US, and then I was like, wait, I don't have a job. It's the recession, and here some people had jobs, you know, and had careers, and I didn't have any of that. But later on, what that showed me was that my path, which was unique to me, was what would lead me to my personal definition of success and happiness. Because from all that hard work that I put in early on, I was able to then, in my late 20s and early 30s, I was able to get into my dream university for my master's program. And I was able to get crystal clear about what I wanted to do. So I actually ended up going to Harvard University for my master's, which was in international education policy. But it took me that time, like those 5 years where I saw everyone settling down and having great careers and relationships, for me to just put in the work and feel like I was so behind, but then to catch up to exactly where I wanted to be. And you'll know that you are on the right path because you no longer feel jealous, because you are just so in your zone, and you are so excited and so invested in your path that it doesn't really matter what other people are doing. You don't feel bad anymore, but you also don't feel better than others. Like, you were just happy and in your zone. And that's the place that I got to 5 years later. And from that point, after getting my master's, then I ended up getting into my dream organization, which was working at the World Bank. So the next tip that I want to share with you is to not deny yourself before others do. Now, oftentimes there are things that we want to do, but maybe we feel like we're not talented enough, smart enough, or someone else can do it better, or it's already been done before, so why even try? And I just want to tell you that, again, those are irrational fears, and that if you put yourself out there, most of the time you will be pleasantly surprised. You miss all the shots that you don't take, right? That's what they say. So if you don't try, then you'll never really know, one, what you're capable of, and two, you can never improve, right? So even if you're starting at a point where you are not necessarily the best that you can be, by you starting and putting yourself out there, then you can develop. Tip number 4 is actually one of my favorite tips because it's almost counterintuitive. But tip number 4 is embrace hitting rock bottom. Now, I've definitely had a lot of highs in my life, but also a lot of lows. And I came to embrace and appreciate hitting rock bottom because I realized that after hitting rock bottom, once you're scraping the barrel, there is no further down that you can go. So you have to come up. So it almost gives you like this momentum that you can really then spring up from and go full throttle after your goals. It's almost like the difference between being sad and angry. So at first you might feel like sad about something, and then all of a sudden you get angry, and you use that anger, or you use that momentum once you've that negative experience or that emotion to then just propel you forward. everything is cyclical in life, right? You don't go from being happy one day to just happier, and like amazingly happy always, right? You sometimes have days where you're sad, some days you're happy, and some days you feel okay, and some days you feel sick, and so it's very cyclical, right? So what comes up must come down, what comes down must come up. So with that said, you know that if you hit rock bottom, you're definitely going to go up from there. Also, I've come to appreciate that when you are in that low period, so whether it's that you're feeling low or you're sick, or maybe you're in between jobs and you lack motivation, I think it's okay to embrace that moment for the time that you feel, because that moment is maybe a time for you to rest, to reflect, to maybe get bored. We underestimate the power of potential energy, right? So we have kinetic and potential energy, and potential energy is just as important as kinetic energy, right? But so we have to embrace that moment, because that moment is when we can then get the rest we need so that we can come back stronger when we're ready to. So now that you're feeling motivated, or at least ready to take action, this leads me to tip number 5. And tip number 5 is, if you want a different result, then take a different action. The same actions you took to get you here is not necessarily the same actions that are going to get you here. So that means stepping outside of your comfort zone, asking for help, seeking out resources, learning from others who have done it. And that may mean that you'll have to do other things, put yourself out there. I remember when I wanted to go to grad school, and I did have a great job. I was very close to making 6 figures back 5 years ago. And I literally quit all of that. I quit my job. I used my savings. I ended up substitute teaching at my old high school and working at a restaurant, and just so that I can have the flexibility of time so that I could apply to grad school, because no one in my family had gone to grad school before, and I was the first person in my family to go to college actually. So I didn't really have those mentors, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I wanted to fully immerse myself. I know many people would say, well, I could just do that, apply to grad school while working, it's not a big deal. And again, everyone has their different path. For me, I knew that if I was going to make a major career change, I needed to be all in, and I needed to figure this stuff out. And I even sought help with editing my essay, my personal statement. I visited every school, I spoke to everyone, and these were things that I never even would have thought to do before. But I took major risks because I knew that I wanted to make this happen. And in the end, it worked out because I got into all of my schools actually. So this is just to say that sometimes don't be afraid to take a different approach. My 6th tip is to know that it's okay to change your mind. I think we have it in our minds, like we built up this persona of who we are. I'm a lawyer, I'm an artist, I'm a doctor, or I'm a construction worker. Whatever it is that you identify with, we hold that as if it's our identity. But the beauty of the era that we live in is that you can change. We have more freedom now than we ever have in our human lifetime. And so you have the ability to change your mind. You can decide tomorrow or even today that, you know what, this is not the path that I want to go on anymore. Of course, that means that you might have to upgrade some skills, you might have to make certain changes in your lifestyle, but that's okay because ultimately you have the freedom to do that. Also, even though you have certain skills in one area, they can be transferable to another industry, another job, or you're just an asset because you bring a new and fresh perspective. That's what happened to me when I was applying to grad schools. I thought, how can I even get into a program for education policy when all I've been doing, well, aside from my internships, my professional experience was marketing, right, and operations. And in fact, they saw that as a fresh perspective, and that made me stand out. So don't be afraid to change, because what you do can help you pivot to something that maybe you're more passionate about. And finally, tip number 7, we've touched on it earlier, but it's to just start. Just start wherever you are, because you are not going to get anywhere if you don't just start today. And be relentless about it. So start and just try to be as consistent as you can, and realize that things take time. And so sometimes you may feel like, what am I doing? This is pointless. But time is going to pass anyway. So the only real currency you have here is time. It's going to be 2 years from now, whether you're pursuing your dreams, contemplating it, or decide to stay stuck wherever you are. So if there's something you want to achieve, you owe it to yourself to start now. And one of my favorite authors, Paulo Coelho, Brazilian author, he has this book called 11 Minutes that I really like, and in it I remember a quote by the main character, and she said, "Life is either too long or too short to be living it this badly." So however you look at it, time is going to pass, and you might as well be living the life that you want to live. So I hope those tips have inspired you. I hope that you recognize that life can be as beautiful as you want it to be. At any point, you have the power to rewrite your story. If you like this video and if you found it helpful, please let me know. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments. And I will see you guys next time.